Hello everyone. We'll be starting with our next session, which is CloudMan, Cluster Management for Big Data in Cloud. I'd request the presenter Swati Singhi from Qubole to take over.
Thank you. A very good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Swati, and I'm currently working with you can call it a startup. I'm currently working with Qubole on the big data domain. And prior to joining Qubole, I was working with the Indian e-commerce giant Flipkart, where I was working in the supply chain team. So today's topic is cluster management for big data in the cloud. So before I begin, I'm sure almost all of us know what big data actually means, but I'll still go through a formal definition. So big data is essentially data of very huge size. It's large volume of data, and the traditional data processing algorithms and the traditional data processing engines are no longer sufficient to analyze this data. So they are no longer sufficient to help us derive meaningful insights out of the data. And with the advancement in technology and the organizations are able to collect more and more data, and with so much amount of data at their disposal, they obviously want to find out meaningful patterns and analyze the data well. So organizations these days have started looking at big data engines to basically run processing algorithms on the data, right? There are two options. So basically, when you want to analyze your data, we know that we have to set up these clusters, and we have to set up the entire infrastructure. For example, if you want to run Hadoop jobs on your data sets, you will have to set up a Hadoop cluster. And so to do that, what we typically do is we'll buy these machines from some vendor, virtual machines from some vendor, and then install the big data software on it. So we'll install Hadoop on it, and then we'll tie up these machines using some networking strategy into a cluster. And so this is how we set up our clusters, but this is on premise, and there are some very obvious disadvantages associated with setting up the entire infrastructure on premise. So the few of the disadvantages are it is fixed. So if you already bought the clusters, you have already set up them with the big data software, and tomorrow if you realize that probably I have set up a 10-node Hadoop cluster, but it is not sufficient, and a 20-node Hadoop cluster would have been a better choice. It is not very easy to provision another 10 machines and install the software again, tie them up into the already running cluster, or set up a fresh cluster with 20 machines. So fixed pre-provisioned capacity is one of the drawbacks of setting up your infra on premise. The other thing is big data workloads tend to be pretty unpredictable. But the on-premise infrastructure doesn't support the variable and the unpredictable workloads because it is fixed. Set them up into a cluster, etc. So on-premise data doesn't support variable and unpredictable workloads. They do not scale well. So like I already mentioned, if you want to provision a larger cluster, it is very difficult. You have to redo the entire cycle. It is expensive. For instance, if you might be using your cluster for only a few hours every day, but you're actually not paying for just those few hours. You're paying for the entire you're paying for the entire day. You're paying for the entire duration. You have bought the clusters for you, but you might not be utilizing them pretty well. Also, you need an on-site IT team to manage and maintain the clusters, right? So these are a couple of disadvantages that are associated with setting up your clusters on premise. So one of the solutions that has been suggested and that works really well is moving to the cloud. So cloud offers cloud basically offers salvation for some of the disadvantages mentioned in the previous slide. So it stretches with the workload. So if you want to start a larger cluster tomorrow, you want to move from a 10 node cluster to a 20 node cluster, you can actually provision these 10 more virtual machines on demand, and things just work. So cloud is elastic in nature and it scales well. Also, cloud has the pay as you go model, so you're actually paying for what you're using. So for example, if you have some ETL job that you're running for only 2 hours every night, you can actually provision those virtual machines for only those 2 hours every night and just pay for those 2 hours. You need not pay for the entire day. So it leads to a lot of cost savings. However, cloud has its own challenges. Moving data to the cloud is one of the challenges, because assume that you have already collected a lot of data over the past few days or past few months, and you want to move things to the cloud now. You will have to copy all of this data into the cloud. Why do we have to copy? So when you're bringing up the clusters in the cloud, the clusters will read and write the data from and to the cloud storage, right? Because the clusters are on the cloud and the data has to be available on the cloud for the processing. So all of this data needs to be moved to the cloud. Security and privacy is another huge concern that corporates have. They are pretty comfortable with keeping all the sensitive data behind the corporate firewall, and they're not really comfortable with storing the data offsite into some cloud location. Concerns like if data encryption is used, if data encryption is enforced, what happens to my data if I no longer need it? Like if I want to delete my data, is there some copy of the data still getting, still stored somewhere? Where is my data physically stored? Like I have stored it on the cloud, but where is the data actually physically stored? How many, does anybody in the cloud vendors team have access to my keys, etc.? So these are some of the challenges associated with big data in the cloud. Moving to the cloud offers basically works well with all of these points. So cloud scales well, and it is elastic, and it is much cheaper than setting things up on premise, right? So to set things up on premise, to have these clusters to have these clusters on the cloud, you have to come up with so you basically need big data as a service, right? So you need some software or some service which will help you bring up these clusters on the cloud. So this is basically what Qubole does. So Qubole is basically a big data as a service on the cloud. So we provide we are basically a fast and a stack implemented on the cloud. You get enterprise ready deployments of your clusters. We are available on the on all of the major public clouds like Amazon Web Services, AWS, Google Compute Engine, and Azure. And it is very simple to use and very, very fast. So you don't have to worry about setting up the clusters, provisioning these virtual machines, installing the software, tying them up into a network, into a cluster, etc. You can just spawn your clusters and start working with your data. Basically concentrate on analyzing your data and not worry about the entire infrastructure headache, right? So we wanted to provide big data as a service, but to do that we wanted some library which will help us spawn clusters on the cloud, right? So one of the most important requirements, like I said, is automate bringing up of clusters, right? So we looked at a couple of already available solutions out there which basically work well with public clouds, and they help us provision virtual machines and bring up these clusters, let us install softwares, etc. So we looked at a couple of these solutions like JCloud, LibCloud, a couple of others like Delta, Fog, etc. But none of them quite met our requirements. I'll go over the requirements. So none of them were quite meeting our requirements, so we decided to implement our own solution. So feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast, and I can take questions in between, so feel free to ask questions. So yeah, so we wanted something which will help us spawn these clusters and which will take care of the cluster management for us. So Cloudman is the software which does it for us, right? Cloudman helps us launch at least 500,000 nodes every month on these clouds. We have customers like Pinterest, etc., who are using Cloudman to spawn clusters which have at least 1,000 nodes on the cloud on a daily basis. Cloudman works across multiple clouds like AWS, Google Cloud, and very recently we've integrated Azure with it. So we've actually, in the last month, we processed 200 petabytes of data using through these clusters for our user, which was spawned by Cloudman. So what Cloudman essentially does is it abstracts out all the cloud specific implementation and provides only higher level APIs to the caller. So for example, if you were to use Cloudman, you could only say that I want a 10 node Hadoop cluster on AWS, or I want a 20 node Spark cluster on Google Cloud. So it is as simple as just saying that. So and Cloudman takes care of all the cloud specific details like bringing up a cluster or bringing up provisioning VMs in AWS might be entirely different when it comes to provisioning VMs in Google or Azure. So Cloudman takes care of all of that, and you could just say it provides very high level APIs, and you could just mention your cluster size, the type of cluster you want, and in which cloud do you want it, right? So before we started writing Cloudman, so before we started writing Cloudman, there were a couple of high-level goals that we wanted Cloudman to achieve, right? Yes.
Sorry, one question. You talked about data. Suppose I spawn a cluster today, and suppose 1 week later I want to spawn a cluster. How does it manage the data underlying in the cluster? Will it remain alive in some cases or not?
So, so you already have some data on some cloud location, right? You want to analyze that data.
Yeah.
So that data is already available. So the data has to be live, but when you're processing, when you want to process your data, you need these clusters that can be brought up on demand.
Okay, so what it does is it will connect to the data and does the processing from it. And also getting the data from my enterprise to the cloud is my headache.
Qubole does provide you data import export functionalities. So if you have data in some on-premise databases like MySQL or MongoDB or any on-premise database, we provide connectors which can help you export the data into some cloud storage like S3 or Google Cloud Storage or Azure Blob Storage. So we provide you these export tools to export the data into the cloud, and then you can bring up these clusters. The clusters will work with your data, and they'll produce all the output back to the cloud storage.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah. Okay, so that's a good question actually. So, so the question is, what is the level of security? So, so the thing is, your data does not reside with Qubole. Your data resides with just you. So, like for example, if Pinterest is using this service, the data will reside in Pinterest's cloud storage accounts. Also, the clusters that we bring up also comes up in Pinterest in the user's cloud account. Right, so we don't spawn the clusters in our account, so the data actually never flows to Qubole's, into our bucket or into our basically doesn't flow through our keys, and the clusters will come up in the user's account, and the data will reside in the user's account. So everything happens there. So all we want is some keys, some compute keys using which we can spawn the clusters in your account. So the data never really flows through us, it just stays with you, like in your cloud account. So apart from that, security around the storage, etc., has to be managed by the user. Okay, So before we started writing this cluster provisioning library, there were a couple of high-level goals we wanted it to achieve. Some of them being were automated cluster provisioning. So suppose you fire a query, you say you're firing a Hadoop job, for instance, and if there is no running cluster, Cloudman should understand that there is no running cluster and I have to bring up a cluster. So the cluster should, it should purchase VMs on customer's behalf, and then it should deploy Hadoop on those VMs, and then connect all these VMs into a cluster using some network. And so this is around automated cluster provisioning, buying VMs, configuring them with the, installing the big data software on them, and then connecting them into a cluster. Once that is done, we also have to configure the big data stack. Since the clusters have to communicate to the cloud storage, there are certain keys which has to be populated, which has to flow into the clusters. So that is also something that's done by Cloudman. So you specify the keys, and Cloudman will make sure all of those keys flows into the cluster, so the cluster knows what storage account to communicate to. The other important goal was managing the cluster lifecycle. So we wanted to optimize cost for our users. So once your job is done, the cluster is done with the Hadoop job, and it is not provisioning, it is not running any active jobs. It should code Hadoop cluster running, and the workload that the user is running on that cluster is very heavy. Right? Cloudman basically identifies that probably the work will not get done in some defined threshold, in some defined time, and it actually auto scales the cluster up. So it will provision some 10 more nodes, and the cluster will now have 10 plus 10, 20 nodes. So all of that is done on the fly. So we wanted to manage cluster lifecycle, basically start clusters, stop clusters, and auto scale the clusters based on the workload. The other goal that we wanted Cloudman to achieve was highly optimized cost of compute. So I'll explain this further in the slides, but what this essentially means is certain cloud providers give you multiple VM purchasing options. So apart from the VMs, the usual virtual machines, they also give you virtual machines which are much cheaper. For example, Amazon provides on-spot spot instances and on-demand instances. So spot instances are highly cheaper than the regular instances, but with the caveat that they can go away at any time. So we wanted to exploit these type of VMs as well, and basically lower costs for our users. So these were some goals that we had in mind before we started writing Cloudman. So this is a typical big data as a service consists of these layers, right? So it has the first layer is obviously the interface with which you would communicate with the cluster. So it could be the UI or the SDKs or the APIs using which you will fire jobs or queries to your cluster. The next layer is the data processing engines. The processing engines that Cloudman supports are Hadoop, Yarn, Pig, Hive, Spark, and Presto. And then comes the cloud orchestration layer, which is Cloudman, and then Cloudman is responsible for spawning clusters in the concerned cloud, in the cloud of your choice. So these are the typical layers in a big data as a service platform. Okay, so this slide basically talks about Cloudman in detail, the architecture of Cloudman. So we have UIs, we have the user interface, and SDKs in Python and Java, and APIs using which a user can submit jobs to logical clusters, and user can start processing data without worrying about cluster management at all. Then there is the middleware layer, which will communicate to this cloud orchestration layer, and that layer is eventually responsible for spawning up clusters in the cloud. So what Cloudman does is it provides very high level APIs to the caller, and okay, so yeah, Cloudman is also responsible for configuring the big data stack. So like I already said, it will spawn clusters, it will spawn VMs, and then it will install the big data software, it will configure the big data software, it will tie them up all together into a cluster. It will start clusters when needed, it will stop clusters when it is no longer needed, it will auto scale the clusters based on the demand, and the user is completely agnostic of all of this. So it only provides, so some of the APIs that Cloudman provides are start, terminate, SSH to a cluster, or add node to a running cluster, remove node, etc. So all of these APIs, they remain the same across for all the clouds, and all the cloud specific details are taken care of by Cloudman. So also Cloudman is very pluggable. So today we have implementations for AWS, GCE, and Azure. Tomorrow if you want to do it for some other cloud, all you have to do is use the cloud provider's API. So it is written in Python. Most of the cloud vendors have SDKs in Python, and you have to just use their Python SDK and implement all of these APIs. So the rest of the ecosystem just continues to work the way it works. So we don't need any changes in the entire tech stack. All we need to do is implement one more cloud specific layer, and that's it. The rest of the ecosystem continues to stay the way it was. Yeah.
So you said that this auto-scaling happens keeping the user oblivious to whatever is happening, right? How do you manage the costs, I mean the user's costs? Because the user would have initially provisioned a 10-node cluster and you're later on auto-scaling it based on the demand.
Yeah, so we basically let our users, we take certain information from the user, so we tell him, so he has to tell us what is the minimum cluster size that should come up all the time. So if he says 5 is the minimum, so every time we provision a cluster, 5 slave nodes will come up. We also ask him to provide us a max number. So he says the max is 20, so when we auto scale, we'll auto scale only up till 20 and we'll not auto scale beyond that. So the user has to give us a minimum cluster size and a maximum cluster size. Minimum we'll ensure always comes up, and we'll auto scale till the max, not beyond it. So that is something that's under user's control. Right? Okay. Okay, so yeah. Importing the data to the cloud?
Yeah, considering the performance side, because it's a big data, how long, like what would be the performance rate? Because the data have to be on the cloud for getting available in cluster more or...
Yeah, so most of our customers who use Cloudman and who use this service have their data already on the cloud. So we have seen that people who already have their data on the cloud are more inclined towards using such a service. But people who don't have their data on the cloud, they have to use, like I said, one of these export tools. And it really depends on the amount of data that you have, and the regions you are transferring the data across. So if you are in the US East region and you are transferring the data into the US East, basically within the same region, then it will be fast. So that depends on a number of things, one being the amount of data that you are actually moving around, the region, I mean if it's a cross region transfer or if it's within the same region, etc. So it depends upon a number of things, but users who actually use, who are inclined towards using this service already are cloud users. They have their data stored on either Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage or Azure's Blob Store.
does it take care of the redundancy or the deduplication of the data before it imports up to the Cloudman? Suppose if it's in a private network and I'm trying to upload a lot of data, so does it take care of the deduplication of the data before it does?
Okay, so first things first, Cloudman is responsible for only spawning the clusters, so it takes care of only the compute.
Okay.
It doesn't take care of any storage related stuff. It assumes that the keys that you are providing, the data is already available in that storage location, and it takes care of only the compute part of it. So there are two aspects to any big data platform, any big data service, the storage and the compute. And Cloudman takes care of only the compute, which is spawning the clusters and computing and running your jobs on the clusters. But the data should already be available on the cloud. So when you are actually exporting your data to the cloud, the user has to take care of the deduplication part and the redundancy things. Those are the things that Cloudman is not concerned with, because it's only taking care of the compute aspect.
Hi,
Yeah.
sorry, I have a question. So how open are the APIs? So let's say I have an enterprise, I'm an enterprise who already has a very pretty big infrastructure management software that the enterprise has created to manage on-prem, and now they've extended to a cloud. So can I integrate Cloudman API for an existing implementation, or I have to create a new one?
So you
For-
mean you want to use these APIs for your on-premise setup?
No. For setting up Cubol clusters on the cloud,
Yeah.
but use the ROP APIs to integrate with the software. Is the Ray API, are the APIs available?
Yeah, so the APIs are available. So you can actually use the APIs, the ones that, so this interface, right, you can use these APIs and to start, stop the clusters. But auto scaling, so you can use these APIs to provide the minimum and the maximum size, and Cubol and Cloudman will internally take care of the auto scaling part. Those APIs, like these APIs, add node, remove node, etc., to an existing clusters, these are not exposed to the outside world.
Okay.
The APIs that are exposed are at this level, so you specify your cluster configuration and we'll bring up the clusters and we'll take care of auto scaling. But add node, remove node, SSH to a cluster,
Right.
etc., are not exposed.
So if I, are the type of instances fixed, or can you control that through the external
Yes,
API?
you can control it through this layer. I'll show a quick demo after this.
Thanks.
So basically we support almost all the compute, almost all the instances that AWS has optimized for compute. So the instances which have better CPU than RAM, which are compute optimized, we support all of those compute instances from AWS, from Google, and as well as Azure. So almost all the compute instance types are supported. Okay. Yeah. So certain challenges that we had to face while writing Cloudman was, we obviously wanted auto scaling to work, but it was not a very trivial thing. And Cubol is the only big data service provider who has this feature. We are the only ones who provide auto scaling. So so we wanted our clusters to auto scale. That was one of the challenges. The other was, like I said, we wanted the library to basically take care of the and address the differences in behaviors and capabilities of all the clouds. So like I said, bringing up a VM in AWS is very different to how we do it for Google or for Azure. So I'll explain some of these, a couple of examples of how we handled a few. Yeah.
Is it done by the user?
Sorry?
Like whoever spawned, like if once you have spawned a cluster, so is security ensured by you guys, or is it the job of the whoever
So
has
security in what sense? Like,
as in like the data security and everything, whatever goes
Yeah.
on that cluster?
So we recommend our users to give us keys. So most of the cloud vendors have concepts of providing specific roles and specific access to a particular set of keys. So we recommend our users to give us keys which have only read access maybe for the data. And so it is mostly taken care of by the user, the security aspects, and the user has to give us keys with only specific set of a specific set of permissions. However, we do bring up our clusters. So for example, in case of AWS, we bring up our clusters in a security group that the user specifies. So and the user controls all the access that that particular security group has. So you can think of security group as a network in which your clusters, in which your VMs will come up, and they will have only specific access. So and also when we are communicating to the cluster, we set up a tunnel in between, and we tell our customers to open only certain ports to that tunnel so that data can flow through, communication can happen through only certain ports. So all of that is done to basically take care of security.
Okay, I have one more question on
Yeah.
autoscale.
Yeah.
So you said there's a minimum and the maximum, right? So if the load is more, so you scale. So you directly scale to the maximum, or is it done like?
We do not scale to the maximum directly. If the user has set up the maximum to a very high number, and if that is really not needed, we'll not scale up till that. We'll scale only till the amount of nodes, like to the optimal number of nodes. And we have that intelligence built into the software. I'll explain how autoscaling happens.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so this slide is basically explains autoscaling in a little more detail. So autoscaling is obviously launching the clusters automatically when needed, and submit, if there is an existing running cluster, submit the jobs to that cluster, do not bring up another cluster. Also, we wanted the clusters to automatically expand, terminate the cluster if there are no running jobs. So we have also we let our users specify this. So we let our users specify that if my cluster is sitting idle for say X minutes, go ahead and terminate it. So that is something that's controllable by the user. Also, when we are removing nodes, we remove them at the billing boundary. So we basically try to optimize cost as much as possible for the user. So in case of AWS, for instance, they charge you by the hour. So if you've already used your cluster for 10 minutes, you will have to still pay for 60 minutes. So when we actually bring down the nodes, we bring them down when they are closer to completing an hour, when they have already completed say 50 minutes. Because there's no point bringing down a cluster for which I've already paid. So if I've already paid, my cluster is already ran for a few minutes, I've already paid, that is running on the master. And job tracker, you can think of it as a daemon which basically manages everything. So it is responsible. Okay. Okay, so basically job tracker is responsible for assigning the tasks to the slave machine. So if you're running say a word count job, and which is and there are like maybe 1 million words, so a job tracker basically it's coming back. Okay, so job tracker basically will assign a part of the task to each of the slave nodes. So it will give a chunk of the data to one slave and a chunk of the data to the other slave and so on. So job tracker really orchestrates all of this. Okay, wanted to show. Yeah, I can take questions. Right now, no. We have had a couple of customers, a couple of users who are still very finicky about putting their data on the cloud, and they want this to run on premise, but we still don't support it on premise. This is for the cloud. So if your data is on the cloud and if you're willing to do things on the cloud, this is when you can use it.
I have a question. So basically you said that the job is spawned to the slave nodes. So the question is that when the job is complete, is the scale down facility also available?
Yes, yes, it is. So, so for example, in a running cluster, the job tracker has assigned a task to the slaves, and they are done with it. And job tracker, for every slave node which is reaching the hour boundary, job tracker checks if the slave is doing anything meaningful. If it is not doing anything meaningful, then it actually tries to decommission that slave. So it will also go down. So if you have a cluster which is running for a couple of days, it will keep going up and down based on the workload. So we also, so there is the users can specify something like the minimum cluster size is 2, and do not ever bring down my cluster. So if you tell us that, we will never bring down your cluster, but we will auto scale it up and down based on the workload, but 2 nodes will always remain. So we have seen use cases where users run their clusters for maybe a few weeks with the minimum set to a very low value and the maximum to a very high value, and they take advantage of auto scaling, downscaling.
The user assign 5 nodes, is the software intelligent enough to inform the user that maybe he or the user can bring down the number of nodes because it costs the user, right?
Yeah, so I mean, there is no automated way of notifying the users, but we do provide things like, there is a view in our interface where you can see how well are your clusters being utilized. So we show all these beautiful graphs, etc., which tells you how well your clusters are being utilized, and that is where we tell you you can probably bring down the cluster size or you should increase it a little more, etc. So we give that view, but there isn't any automated notifications as of now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So basically, cluster management as well as configuring. So if you want to bring up a Spark cluster, so it's not like Cloudman will just bring up the clusters and you will have to install Spark on it. Cloudman will do that for you. Yeah. The cluster management, yes.
We are going to do something different ahead in the future.
Different as in?
Anything else apart from the cluster management? Because I mean, when we see like when the questions like security comes up and performance comes up, you have anything in your roadmap?
Yes, so like I said, we are enhancing the security security stuff as well. So initially we did not have support for security groups. Now we have support for them. Amazon recently launched something called VPCs, so which is even more secured network. So Cloudman has started supporting VPCs as well. So as and when the clouds come up with such for example, in Azure also there is you will have to set up your own network. I mean, the users have requirements that I don't want you to, bring up a network for me. I will set up the network and you have to attach to the same network. So the users can bring up the network and they can just give us some information about the network and we will make sure the clusters attached to that network. So as and when the clouds come up with these functionalities, we try and support all of them. Yeah, so you can actually specify the security group name, or you can specify the VPC, or in case of Azure, you can specify the network name, and we will bring up the clusters in that network.
Swati. Yeah, Swati, I have a question. When the auto scaling happens, who takes care of provisioning and bringing up the applications in the newly scaled mode? And second part of it is, how is the load balancing taken care of when a cluster goes from 5 nodes to 20 nodes? Yes. Who takes care of the load balancing, applications or your solution?
Yeah, so so this is the animation and I'll answer both of your questions. So when the user has started some job, and assuming there is a cluster already running with a couple of slaves and obviously a master. So when the job is submitted to the cluster, in a typical Hadoop job, there are mappers and reducers which are spawned. So the job tracker then assigns these tasks onto to the slave machines. What happens next is the slave machines also inform the job tracker about the progress, how much of the job is done, what was their launch time, etc., etc. So all of this information flows to the job tracker. Now job tracker is intelligent enough to figure out the difference between the demand and the supply. So for example, job tracker knows how many map tasks are done and what was the time taken to complete it. So it can calculate an average progress rate. And it also knows about the number of map tasks that are still left. So using the number of tasks that are still left and the average progress, it anticipates the future load. Basically, it calculates how much time would it take. So if every map task on an average took 2 minutes to complete, and if there are 10 more map tasks left, it will probably take another 20 minutes to get done with the mappers. So job tracker computes all of this, and so we let our users also specify a threshold. So, and if the user has specified a threshold saying the job should get done in 15 minutes, and the job tracker calculates that it will take another 20 minutes, it tries to auto scale. So it will basically tell the Cloudman about it, that hey, give me another 3 nodes, and the Cloudman will then bring up another 3 nodes and attach them to the running cluster. How will it do that? Cloudman already knows about the network to which the cluster to which all the machines are already attached, and it will attach the newer machines to the same cluster. So now all of that becomes part of the same cluster. And now the job tracker, it is responsibility of the job tracker to load balance the tasks among all the slaves. So the load balancing is intelligence that is built into the engines. So Hadoop Hadoop has its own load balancing. So there is something known as fair scheduling. So fair scheduling is property of Hadoop which takes care of the load balancing. Similarly, all the processing engines, they come up with their own load balancing. But the question was, one question was load balancing, then the other was how do we configure these nodes? Basically, how do we install Hadoop on these nodes again? So what we do for this is, so there is something called image creation and registration. Every time, for instance, if you are trying to just bring up a VM on some cloud and you want a Windows VM, so you will have to tell the cloud vendor that I want a Windows VM. So it will let you select an image. It could be, I mean, there are multiple Windows images for all the versions, and you use your own image. Maybe I want to bring up a Ubuntu based machine or a CentOS based VM. So you basically select the operating system which is baked into an image, right? So so we used the same concept. So what we do is our machines are CentOS based. So we first take a plain CentOS vanilla VM and we install all our processing engines on that VM. So Hadoop is already installed, Spark is already installed, all of this is already installed on that image, on that machine, and then we create an image out of that machine and put it in some location. Now when CloudMan is starting up these VMs, it knows the location of that image and it will boot up the machines on top of that image. So the machines that come up already have these softwares installed. So to answer your question, we actually used images which have all the processing engines already installed on them. Why we do this? Because it saves us time while booting up. Yes.
Latest updated Hadoop, so do we update the VMs as well or the images as well?
Yeah, so every time we do some optimizations, or maybe we are trying to go ahead with a newer Hadoop version or maybe a newer software altogether, we pre-bake everything into an image and we keep it ready somewhere so that the machines that come up can use this to save time.
So we that somewhere is on the cloud itself?
Yeah, that somewhere is on the cloud. Okay. Yeah. So this essentially saves us a lot of time while we are trying to boot the machines, because we don't have to explicitly install our softwares. So yeah. Your own image.
Software and hardware. Sorry, the OS and software baked into.
Yeah. So we bring up the machines with our image because we want a couple of softwares installed on it. Like CloudMan has to be installed on these machines for auto scaling, downscaling, etc. to take place. But this is a good question. So if you want something extra on the machine, right? So we let you specify a bootstrap file. Basically, it's a script where you can specify all the things that you want to do with the cluster. Maybe you want to install a few very basic Python packages for that matter. So you put all of that into a script, and you can give us the location of that script on your cloud storage account. So you tell us that my script is in this location, and every time you boot up the machine, run my script as well. So all of these extra packages will also get installed. So all that is also taken care of by CloudMan. Right? Okay, so like I was saying that most of the operations had to be implemented in a very different way for every cloud. So in case of Amazon, what we do is when we bake this image, we put it in a public location. That's it. So, and the CloudMan knows about the location. So when it brings up these VMs, it will read the image from that location and we are done. Yeah. Okay. So, but in case of Azure, public images don't really work very well. So we had to build that intelligence within CloudMan. So what we do is when we bring up, when we create an image, we copy to public images don't work well. So the VMs that come up, they actually cannot read the image from a public location. So that image has to be copied into the customer's account, and then the machines should be brought up. So, so all of that had to be, this intelligence had to be built into CloudMan. So what it does when it bakes the image for Azure, it copies the image into all the regions. And then if the cluster is, if the customer is starting a VM in the East, US East region, we will read the image that we have copied in the US East region, because region to region copy is faster. So since public images weren't working well with Azure. So this is one such example where we had to do things very differently for clouds. Okay, this is something that I've already said. Another operation was cluster configuration. So like I said, when we bring up the clusters, we have to install the we have to configure the storage and the compute keys so that the cluster can talk to the storage account. Also, I said that the Hadoop is installed, or probably Spark is installed, or Yarn is installed, and so on. But the appropriate daemons have to be started, because we don't know beforehand what machine will be master and what machine will be slave. So once a machine comes up as master, we have to start maybe job tracker and name node in case of Hadoop 1 on the master, and task tracker data nodes on the slave machines. So this is also something that's taken care of by CloudMan. But this cluster configuration is done via something called startup scripts or user data files. So cloud vendors give you, provide the ability, they let you specify a script, like we let you specify a script. Similarly, the cloud vendors let us specify a script that will run when the VM boots up. Almost all the cloud providers let you specify this, but in case of Azure, they didn't actually run the script. For CentOS VMs, they don't run the script. They will just let you specify the script, but the script doesn't run when the VM boots up, and none of this happens. So when we were working with Azure, we realized this, and then we had to again build another intelligence in CloudMan that when it is doing things for Azure, the image, so it has to basically specifically go and start the script as well, which is not required in AWS. So these examples just depict the fact that the cluster provisioning layer, if it has to work well with all the clouds, it has to take care of these very cloud specific implementation details, and the user should not be really bothered about it. So not only our customers, but the rest of the Qubole ecosystem should also be not be really worried about what happens for every cloud. So all of this is built into CloudMan. Okay. Another thing is, like I said, certain cloud vendors give you options of buying ephemeral machines. What do we mean by ephemeral machines is they can go away at any time, right? But they are very, very cheap. Sometimes 1/10 of the usual machines. And we obviously wanted the users to take benefit of this thing. In AWS, they are known as spot instances. In GC, Google has something called preemptible VMs. So we also have this intelligence built into CloudMan. So we'll let our users specify that do you want spot instances or not? And if the user says yes, when we auto scale the clusters, we will bring up spot instances instead of on-demand instances. So the original, the basic minimum cluster has all the on-demand instances, so they will never go away. But when you auto scale up and down, those machines can be spot instances if the user wants. The user can also specify that I want only 50% of the machines to be spot and the other 50 to be on demand. So all of that is something that user can provide, and when we auto scale, we will bring up these spot instances or preemptible VMs for the on the user's behalf. But certain challenges with this is, if the spot machine just goes away like that, there is data loss, because when the mappers are running, they produce some intermediate data which will be used by the reducers. So what we do is we ensure that at least one copy of the data that is on the spot instance is also available on an on-demand instance. So even if the spot instance goes away, we can replicate the data, because it is already available on other on-demand instance which will not go away. So this is one of very important factors that our users really love, because we have done some analysis, and for example, our customers have saved over just a period of 2 days. Spot instances have helped them save at least 35% of their cost. So this is another feature that is another intelligence that's built into CloudMan. So for example, when you buy spot instances, you have to actually bid for those instances in the spot market. So, and when your bid is the highest, only then will you get the spot machine. And we don't want our users, and especially people, data scientists or the data analyst team, to exploit these opportunities, they have to have a very deeper understanding of the cloud. But when they use CloudMan and when they use Qubole, they actually don't need a deeper understanding. We do all of it on their behalf, right? So I'll quickly walk guys through a demo. Okay, so this is how the Qubole interface looks like, right? So these are the queries that you can run. So we have the ability to run Hive, Presto, Pig, Shell, Hadoop, data import, export, etc. So all you need to do is click on the compose button right there and just compose your query, right? So you can also rerun an older query. So this was a query that I'd already run, and you can just click on the rerun button. So this is the control panel where you manage all the clusters. So these are the already available clusters in your account. We let the user specify, this is a AWS stuff, so we let you specify the access key, secret key, and a couple of other details. This is related to the storage where your data resides. Then you go to the cluster tab, and these are the available clusters, but none of them are currently in the running state. All of them are terminated. So what you can do is you can click on the edit button, and here is, so it did not capture the drop downs for some reason, but you can specify the cluster type. So you can select Hadoop, Yarn, Spark, Presto, etc. Like I said, you can select the minimum slave count and the maximum slave count, and we will auto scale up till the maximum. We also let you specify the node types. Again, it did not capture the drop down, but there are at least 20 different node types that you can select. Auto scaling node purchasing options, spot instances, and hybrid instances. And then you specify the compute and the access key for your, the access key, secret key for your compute, the account in which the clusters will come up. Once you're done configuring your clusters, you click save, and that's it. You say start and your cluster starts. So it is actually now bringing up a cluster. It takes a couple of minutes for the cluster to come up. So it is as simple as that. So it is now in the pending state. It will take a couple of minutes to just come up. So here the cluster has already come up. It shows it in green. The minimum was 1, so there is just one slave. This is showing the DNS for the slave and the master. So once you're done with that, you can actually, now you're good to go and you can start running your queries. So you go back to the analyze page, click on compose, and here in this case I'm running an older query. So your cluster is up, it shows which cluster your query will go to, and you just say rerun, or you can type a fresh query. So it is as simple as that. You log on to Qubole, you just configure a few keys, you specify your node type and your minimum slave count, maximum slave count. If you want to deal with spot instances, etc., specify a few of them, and click save, start your cluster, and run your cluster. If you're running your query and by then your cluster is not already started, it will actually bring it up. So here these are the logs. It says the number of mappers, etc., and it has actually started running your job. So the map is 0%, reduces 0%, and it will go on. So yeah, that was a quick demo.
I have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm almost done. Yeah. So this is the last slide. I've already gone over the key takeaways a lot of time.
You mentioned something like it could be shown in a graphical way. What is the performance? How the cluster nodes are,
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't actually capture that in the video, but there is an overview. So if you log on to Qubole, there is an overview section where you go. It actually shows you what is the amount of data that you have processed, how many clusters have you brought up in the last couple of days, how well utilized were your clusters, etc. So it shows a lot of these details. Also, things like how many people in your company have access to a particular cluster. So we let you, that is not something specific to Cloudman, but we also let you specify that a particular, say I'm running, you can label your clusters and then you can say only these users will have access to this particular cluster. So from security point of view, we let you control all of that. So if some of your clusters are maybe running production workloads and you don't want your entire team to have access to that, you can actually control all of that. And there is an overview button, but I'm sorry I did not capture that in the video, which shows your usage patterns. Yeah, so this is just the last slide, and so the key takeaways I believe from the session was that we have built a highly efficient cluster management system. It is proven at scale in production. We launch 500,000 nodes every month. Last month, which is November, we processed 200 petabytes of data on our users' behalf, and it works across multiple clouds. And we have users who launch clusters which are as high as 1,000, having 1,000 slave nodes, which run across a few days. So yeah, so this is it. I'm done. I can take questions now.
So I had a question. You say that you work across multiple clouds, but is it even for one customer, is the cluster like provisioned across multiple clouds for say one cluster itself?
Yeah, so that is a good question. So we haven't seen, so the usage pattern that we have seen, users typically have their data on just one particular cloud. So they will either have their data on Amazon S3 or on the Google cloud, but we haven't really seen use cases where the users have data across multiple clouds. So if the data isn't available on multiple clouds, they really don't have the requirement to run clusters in multiple clouds. But when you want to use Qubole, currently we don't have a unified interface, so you have to log on to gc.qubole.com and azure.qubole.com and aws.qubole.com for now, but we have that in our roadmap. We are trying to unify all of this into one user interface. Yeah.
So how easy is the migration between different clouds? Like if you have to move from one vendor to the other, is the migration easy?
Yeah, so one important aspect is data migration, and that is something that we provide as a service as well. So you specify that this is my data on S3 and I want to move it to Google Cloud. We will let you move the data using our tools, and then you can configure. Similarly, you just buy an account from, you basically sign up on Google and then give us your, similar to access key, secret key, Google has a set of 4 keys that you have to provide. Once you do that, the clusters are up. Yeah.
And what about the scaling on the back end? Like, do you have cloning and for resident VMs, do you do cloning on the back
end? So basically the concept of having 2 masters, basically one is not active, like one is passive and the other is active. We don't do that. So if your cluster goes down, it just goes down. But that really doesn't happen, because that will happen only if there is something has gone wrong on the cloud vendors, on the cloud providers side. If they are doing some sort of maintenance or seeing some sort of outage, then the clusters will go away here as well.
But even the slave can go down.
Yeah, the slaves can go down, yes, and especially if they are spot instances, they will go down at some point. So what we do is, when the spot instances are going down, we ensure, so we keep a copy of the data on some other, so the data is the only thing that spot instances had, and we keep a copy of the data in some on-demand instances as well. And if the replication factor, for example, is 3, and only 2 copies are left because 1 copy has gone down, it'll get replicated back. Yeah.
So generally the scale characteristics of user cluster depends upon the underlying cloud cluster, like the number of cores available in the cloud cluster and all. So if the user wants to scale beyond that, how you circumvent that?
Okay, so for example, certain clouds, if you have not, so for example, in case of Azure, if you have not purchased a premium, some package, like they have multiple buying options, like multiple packages. So there is one pay-as-you-go model, and then there is one enterprise package, etc. and certain packages have limit. So for example, you can launch only up till 20 virtual machines. In some cases, if there is a you're under the trial mode, then you can launch probably just 5 VMs. So that is something, that is a limit at the cloud vendor's end. So we can't bring up more machines if the cloud vendor doesn't allow you to bring up these machines, because we are bringing up the machines on your cloud account, right? So that is not taken care of. You have to buy, you have to basically ensure that your quota is more. So this is something like quotas, and AWS gives you a quota wherein you can only bring up only 100 EC2 instances, right? And if you set up the maximum, say to 120, we will not be able to do that. You will have to buy more quota from AWS.
Scale beyond that, the scale story will be to have multiple clusters.
Yeah, they can have multiple clusters will also not help, because eventually all of these machines are EC2 instances, for example, and if you can bring up only 100 EC2 instances in your account, then your clusters can have only 100 VMs. All these clusters are coming up in the customer's account. That is why we take the compute keys as well. So when you sign up for Qubole, for 15 days, we let you bring up clusters on our account, and we let you play with the data, with our sample data. But beyond that, you will have to give your keys, and the clusters will come up in your account. So you will get billed directly by the cloud vendor. So if you bring up 100 VMs, the cloud vendor will bill you for 100 VMs.
Okay, I think we've overshot time. All questions are done, I hope. Thank you so much, Swati, for the very interesting session.
Thank you.
So,
hope you liked it.
yeah, just one note for the audience. So everyone has the Convene app, which has like the details about the sessions and all. You can also go and rate the sessions on the app, as well as give your comments. And if anyone is interested in the slides or anything, you can mention that too in the comments. So we have Bharti here, who is the co-chair of the Systems Engineering Committee. I'd request her to present a small memento to Swati.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, it was a very interactive audience.